Okay, thank you so much for being here tonight. If you're watching this live or you're watching the replay, now's the perfect time to get yourself comfortable, grab a cuppa, a notepad, or whatever, because you're possibly learning something new here tonight. So it's this topic that we're talking about. Tina reached out to me and said, "Why don't we do MTHFR?" And I was like, "Oh my gosh, absolutely!" And it's something that I really deeply care about because it affects me and my family personally. So MTHFR will be touching on it, about the toxic load, about cellular stress, and it's about what happens when that increasing pressure finally catches up with the body. So, we'll be talking about what to look for, that cellular resilience, and why so many families are seeing significant improvements, significant shifts in their energy, their clarity, their health, their hormones, recovery, whatever it might be. Often when they feel like they've just been going round and round in circles and feeling like they're not moving the needle, like they're spending a truckload of money going to this place, that place, and they just feel like, yeah, it's all too hard. And for those who don't know me, my name's Rhonda Muller. I'm a mum, a grandmother, and a functional nutritional therapist and founder of ASD Healthy Life. And I've been working in this space since 2009, and I'm based in Mackay, North Queensland, Australia. And I'm not sure if for those who jumped on the call earlier, you would have seen that gorgeous hairy critter with the big goatee and the mullet in the back. Well, that's my baby boy, and he was the one that started me on my natural health journey to actually start to study functional medicine and stuff like that. So I predominantly work with women and children, although men, they absolutely benefit from what we do as well. But it's usually us women that are on the front line. We're usually the ones, constantly doing research. Like if you're anything like me, I was up researching until 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. My husband called it my Google diploma. Us girls, when we feel something's not quite right, we truly do better research than the FBI. My priority has always been, I'm not interested in chasing or managing symptoms. I want to understand what's going on, what's underlying, why. I used to drive my mother insane when I was a little girl. I'd always say, but why? And if something doesn't make sense, I do. I ask 8 million different questions. If families are exhausted and they're not getting answers, I look deeper and I connect. I'm a really big believer of networking, reaching out to, the people in the community that have tapped into all different, modalities, and TIN is one of those. So for years in clinic, I supported people the long way around. Oh, don't get me wrong, I was getting absolutely fantastic results. I was working on gut repair, mental health, fatigue, autism. My business, I founded ASD Healthy Life. I'm not sure if you can see that thing in the big banner. That was because of my baby boy. I was addressing allergies and hormones and inflammation, and we were addressing the foundation and then layering all the modalities, all the therapies and stuff on top. And we were getting fantastic results, but it was often complex and it sometimes a bit slower than what people wanted and sometimes quite costly. Yeah. And by the time families got to me, they were predominantly already burnt out by the time they got to me. So we're going to be talking about the genetic profiling that, genes are passed down through the generations. We can't change that, but genes are not your destiny. All right. The environmental load is what matters. And MTHFR, so a lot of people call it the mother gene. Even my husband did. It stands for methylene tetrahydrofolate reductase. That's why we call it MTHFR. It's one heck of a mouthful. Predominantly, it's an enzyme and it influences methylation, which then impacts detoxification, neurotransmitters, hormone metabolism, glutathione production, histamine balance, yada, yada. I'm not going to go right into the science. But around 30 to 50% of the population on a global scale carry at least one variant. I have two. It is not rare. What becomes relevant is that load, that toxic load, right? It's not a death sentence. It doesn't mean that there's something wrong with you or, you've got any kind of significant learning delay, but when you understand the triggers that are going to bring you down, like you're a canary in the coal mine, pretty much. Processed food is not your friend. Synthetic supplements like folic acid, chronic stress, sleep deprivation. That's me at the moment with puppies, right? Medication, environmental toxins, trauma, that intergenerational trauma. Pretty much it takes 7 to 10 years for that to start to peter out. When that load exceeds your capacity, that's when the symptoms show up. Does this make sense? Put a 1 in the chat if this is making sense. Fatigue, brain fog, neurodevelopmental conditions. This is what I was seeing all the time in clinic. Mast cell activation, like your histamine and all that kind of stuff, immune issues, poor recovery, fatigue, hormonal, like I was talking about, supplement intolerances, fertility issues. You've got cells that have gone rogue, like that big word that we're not allowed to talk about. If you want to have that big girl conversation, go back to the person who cared enough to invite you here, and they can talk about it, in the open. Inflammatory patterns. For years in clinic, I supported people by removing the layers of that load and really supporting diet, like removing what was harming, replenish with what was healing. We're looking at gut repair, nutrient correction. So for example, a lot of people, they don't have enough vitamins and minerals, and that can really escalate a whole host of things as well. But also we're not detoxing as nature intended. And I think you'd all agree, our environment is way more toxic now than what it was when our grandmothers were little girls. Yeah. So about 7 years ago, something totally shifted in my own home, and then I applied it in clinic. And again, we weren't just removing that toxic load. We started reawakening proteins within our body, enzymes, peptides, internal pathways, internal endogenous antioxidant production. So you've heard taking antioxidants, that's exogenous, external. I'm talking about reawakening what you already have, getting your mitochondria working again, the battery in every single cell. That's when things really started to shift and things were far more efficient, because we're not forcing the body to do something. We're just saying, okay, wake up. You've gone dormant. You've been stressed. We've calmed the farm. Now things are going to start working as nature intended. All right. So, and since incorporating this, I've watched families regain their energy. I was one of them. Recover from stress, because recovering my son from level 3 autism, the one that you saw, that big streak, nothing, he's 21, full, living his full life, earning, traveling the world, yada, yada. But when you start to look at that and then you address everything, families absolutely grow and thrive, because a lot of them feel like they're just surviving. All right, so we're not talking about replacing medical care. We're just looking at the terrain and improving it, okay? So I don't want to go on too much. I'm really excited because we've had such an overwhelming response. So what we're talking about tonight is Tina is here to share with us what her story is. She doesn't come from, she doesn't just understand what we're talking about from, a science perspective, but she understands stress, trauma, nervous system dysregulation, all of these things through her work as a spinal flow practitioner. And she's been doing it for a long time. She sees what happens when the body is under that load, and she sees what happens when the load is reduced. So, Tina, you're going to share tonight about what's happened in your own life and what's happened in your own family. Yeah. So, and what I also love about Tina, she's been in this natural health space for, I don't know, Tina, how long? Forever.
Well, I'm nearly 60, so.
But she's always open to that continual learning, right? She doesn't have blinkers on. She's really always, very much like me, very open to what's happening out there. And don't get me wrong, when she first heard about this, she was like, I need to do my own research. And I was exactly the same. So, yeah, it's not about treating genes, and it's not about, fear mongering or anything. It's about resilience. So welcome, welcome, welcome. Let's get started. For those who don't know you, can you just tell us a little bit about who you are, where you're from, your family, and what you do now?
So I'm Tina, and as you'll probably gather as I keep talking, I'm originally from the UK, and I've been here since 2005. Been a spinal flow practitioner for nearly 6 years. 3 children, 3 grandbabies. Been married 36 years. And I've got a big 6-0 coming up in a couple of weeks. So it's all exciting times.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, yeah, the big 6-0, it's like, well, I feel, I don't know about you, but I don't feel like I'm nearly 60. And the way you're running around, you don't look like you're nearly 60 anyway. But before we get into what you do now, can you just give us a bit of, a bit of background of, what your story was, what's happening?
Sure. So I've just always been into natural health, into how we can support the body naturally. I was just leaving high school when Anita Roddick launched the Body Shop, and then I soon learned that they had lots of things in that I didn't want to use. But what that taught me at that age was that whatever you put on the skin goes into the bloodstream within 26 seconds. And so that was huge at that age for me to learn that. And then leaping forward to my first baby at the age of 29, he had eczema. Not as severe as some, but I still was having to put the bandages on. And the doctor gave me a nice, great big tub of E45 cream, which I think you did have here. And I looked on it one day and saw that it contained petrochemicals. And yeah, that just blew my mind that the doctor would give me that. So that was a huge marking point. I no longer trusted doctors from then on in. Yeah. And then after that, where are we at now, Rhonda?
Yeah, so I think, obviously doctors have their place.
Yes.
There's a time and a place for, mainstream medicine and all that kind of stuff. I've got, a handful of girlfriends who are functional doctors, but we actually met when we were studying nutrient therapy because they weren't learning that in mainstream, medicine as a doctor. So yeah, I totally get where you're coming from. And I think, as you were saying, there was health issues with yourself. There was also health issues with your son. Do you want to just touch a little bit on that?
Yeah. So he actually starved for his first 3 months of life because, unbeknownst to me, for quite some time, the pregnancy the labor had made my thyroid go through the roof. And that triggered, I learned years later, that triggered the victim mentality in him. There's 5 things that need to be met for a newborn, and one of those is nutrition. And of course, that wasn't met. And that specific element then triggers often the victim mentality. So then we had lots of dramas through his life.
Yeah, and because you were touching on something about the labor. Do you want to just go into that?
Yeah, sure. So I had huge fear of drugs, huge fear of being paralyzed. I don't know where that came from, but I had huge fear of that. Actually, that's a little fib because I just remember Mum told me that she actually was awake through one surgery and they didn't know. So now see how this is what my journey's like. When I talk about it, more light bulb moments go off. So no one would tell me which ones would do what. And no one said to me, well, Tina, you might not need any. So then my body put the labor on hold. So I was 3 days in labor.
Holy dooly.
Eventually they induced me and then they gave me pethidine. I hadn't eaten that whole time. I projectile vomited all the water I drank, and I was fully paralyzed after he was born. Not for long, I don't remember how long, it was probably minutes. However, that light bulb has only just happened in the last sort of, beginning of this year. So it is phenomenal when you look back at your journey and see things along the way that have happened and then start to get a deeper understanding of why. So then at the age of 48, my brain went completely to mush. I had no short-term memory, absolutely none. It was so scary, but I was working in a health store at the time, and there was a naturopath in there doing candida. That was his focus, was candida testing. And so I worked with him, and yeah, thankfully, because I think otherwise I would have been put in an institution. They probably would have labeled me with early onset Alzheimer's. So did a lot of things, took a lot of supplements and things, but people were coming in the shop and it was only taking them a month to clear this. It took me 13 months. Again, it was working, it was doing stuff, working on the gut, but with this issue, the body can't process all that stuff. You're putting it in half hour before, 15 minutes before, while you're eating, after you've eaten, and it's just too much. So anyway, I did get my brain back, most of it. And but it made me then, another sort of pivotal time, start thinking, well, what's under that? Because I got excited thinking that when I came out the other side of that the candida was the issue that was causing the brain fog and all these kinds of things and the lack of energy. My mum always said to me, if I went any slower, I'd go backwards, because I never had any energy in the evenings, even before kids. I just didn't. I could pull an all-nighter if I choose to, but that's different, right? That's using your adrenals and that. So yes, it's like, well, what's under that? What's under that? And so for quite a lot of years, I was on that quest to find what is under that, and realized it was our cells. And then it took quite some time, several years, and a couple of times of people saying, oh, I'm taking this. Oh, yeah, okay. Before then, you and I then got together, Rhonda, and I started working with you as a nutritional therapist, and on we went.
Yeah. And so can you recall, because we obviously did the genetic profiling, and we did the full nutritional, values of all your vitamins and minerals, and genetics for celiac gene and the genetics for MTHFR. And that's one thing, if you guys aren't aware, if you're jotting this down, and not everyone, but majority of people who have the MTHFR gene mutation often also have the celiac gene. Does not mean that you're going to develop celiac disease as such, right? Remember, genes, right? It's pretty much the stapler. It's been passed through the generations, but what you put in there, potentially, because of the environmental load, will trigger it, right? So can you recall, what were your thoughts when you identified the genetic results, and then also the supplementation of what you needed because you were depleted in certain areas? Can you recall that?
Well, I didn't really take much notice. I'd had friends talking about the MTHFR gene for 20 years. And so it was great to know that I had it, and a partial SNP on one of the two celiac genes, but I didn't comprehend what that meant for me. So with working together, we did, like I did so well, doing my regular blood tests, my supplements, I was able to halve the amount of supplements I was taking within 4 months. And I remember you saying to me that with my zinc, it would take your clients 2 years to get to the level that I'd got if they didn't activate their cells. So that was phenomenal for me. Then that was the point when I said, oh my goodness, I need to tell everybody about these products, because that's what happens if it means that your cells are able to absorb the supplements that we're taking twice as effectively, that's huge.
Yeah,
Absolutely
absolutely.
huge for
Absolutely.
anybody, let alone
Yes.
someone with the issues that
Yeah, exactly. And so, yeah, you really noticed in regards to the supplementation when we tested again after 3 4 months, and then you saw a significant improvement, but you also felt the
Yeah.
improvement. So what really excited me, because that was 7 years ago that I actually incorporated it, and I noticed a big change for my son, even though I had actually recovered in 2.5 years before I found activation. I was spewing. I didn't hear about it earlier, right? Because activation products have been around since 2003, and he was born 2005, diagnosed level 3 in May 2008. I really, really wish I'd known about them back then. So, and another reason why I refuse to gatekeep any information, right? Because information, it's just a smorgasbord of knowledge, and you can just pick and choose what it is that you need and what you want. But yeah, I really appreciate you sharing that. And what I noticed with my son was then we would do a complete digestive stool analysis to identify, absorption of nutrients. So yes, you can take supplements, but the old saying is you are what you eat, right? But I take it further, you are what you absorb. And some people say your gut is your second brain. Well, I would go as far as saying it's really your first brain, because the neurotransmitters, in your gut, we have way more than the spine in the gut. So that's, I know that you get that because spine's all your thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. But when we saw a significant improvement of absorption
Yeah.
of nutrients from a stool analysis for my son, and that was the only thing we changed, I knew we were onto something as well. So yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. Because yeah, it's like so many people are trying to do everything that they can to, reduce all the packaged food and stuff, but they still feel sick and tired of being sick and tired. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess for me, a question moving forward is what point do you think you realize that, it wasn't like, for example, you were talking about looking back, you see how it was impacting your pregnancy, your labor, your thyroid was something as well, what do you see was really the pivotal thing? Like, when did you notice, for example, your thyroid?
The thyroid was then after I got bedridden. So eventually they did do something about it. I actually had the documentation changed at the hospital. I was near Cambridge, a massive research hospital, and you go in for your intake when you're first pregnant, and they ask you, family history, mental health, blah, blah, blah. They didn't ask about thyroid. And my mum had a thyroid issue, and then my sister after that. But if they'd have asked me that, I could have said yes. And just maybe then, after I'd had the baby, it may well have rung an alarm bell at the clinic. So I did get that changed, hopefully then anyone coming after me. So that was something that I was able to do.
Yeah, well done. Yeah. And so when you started to, address, really pin down, niche down on the MTHFR, and you started activating, so reawakening, the proteins and the peptides and the enzymes in your body, what did you notice with your thyroid? Because a lot of people don't realize MTHFR and thyroid can be a big factor as well.
Yeah, well, the thyroid, I take natural thyroid extract, and it was quite stable for a long time. The change in that has been last year, which is then after 4.5 years of being activated, because it takes the body a long time sometimes. I love that even after 4.5 years, I had huge change in that I was able to lower the dose of my
yes, yeah.
I mean, that's huge. That's so awesome. Yeah, so the other key things though that I noticed in the early stages, like 2.5 weeks, I mentioned what mum used to say about me. 8 o'clock one night, I was sat on the couch and I just looked at my window and thought, I'm going to clean the mold off that window. And that was a shock. because that's motivation, right? I never had motivation at 8 o'clock at night. And so I got up and I cleaned it, and I then just did the whole house like that. Just incredible, incredible. And it just proceeded from there, really. So the brain fog went, and I had so much more energy, lots and lots of things as I moved forward that I could only account to having been working differently at that foundational level of my body.
Yeah, yeah. And I recall you saying something about also that something changed, something like you had a big shift in the way you were thinking, like the way you were processing information, or was it, yeah, I can't recall. Can you recall what that was?
Was it with the numbers?
Yes, the numbers.
Yes. Okay. So I'd always believed that I had a bit missing in my brain for numbers, so much so that at college, when I learnt to type, I did not incorporate the numbers in the QWERTY keyboard. And then after, I don't know, it would have been maybe a couple of years of being activated, just suddenly all of this stuff happened. I actually had, I kid you not, a fizzing in my brain for 2 weeks, a physical fizzing, because things had been triggered, conversations and awarenesses. And I realized that actually it was due to a teacher at school having, when they would say Friday afternoon, Tina, what's 7 6s? Sarah, what's 4 3s? And I obviously went, ugh, because I didn't know the answer, and it shut it down. And it shut down the public speaking, and it shut down my ability to even learn my times tables. And I didn't know that. I used to write them over and over, trying to learn them, not knowing it was too late. My brain was refusing to accept them. And all that unraveled once my cells were activated. Absolutely incredible. I even went to a cafe, and this will be normal for most people, but in the moment when she asked me, when she told me how much it was, I actually knew in that instant, if I give her this coinage and this note, that's the note she's going to give me back as change. I'd never even been able to tell if I had been given the right change. And so we're talking for like 58 years or something, you know? So that was massive, absolutely massive.
Yeah, yeah. I remember you contacting me, and we were almost in tears, because it was just like, yeah,
Yeah.
wow, you know, because and it's like it's like a mental block, you know, it's a mindset, and all of a sudden there's a mind shift. Yeah. And it's just different. It's the neurodevelopmental neural pathways that once we clean out the gunk, all the inflammation, all that cellular stress, the oxidative stress, all the toxins, right? When we take the NRF2 activator to make our endogenous internal antioxidants, one of them is glutathione. And that is absolutely powerful for detoxification, heavy metals, and yada, yada. So when we've got the MTHFR gene, we've got to be really mindful. Like even spraying perfume on us can be really problematic.
Ask my kids. I'm the worst one. They're not allowed to spray it anywhere in the house or anywhere.
Yeah, absolutely. There's been so many people where I see, you know, they're having histamine reactions, you know, anaphylaxis or asthma and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, it's because their body's not detoxing properly. And when you can make your own glutathione rather than taking it oral like NAC, you need a whole truckload of precursors to be able to even make your own glutathione. This does it. 1 tablet a day, 5 herbs, just amazing. And there's robust independent science to show that it increases it by 300% in like 120 days. So yeah, that was huge for me. Thank you so much for sharing that. So, you know, after years of doing all the right things, you know, the supplementation, the diet, because it took you a bit, you know, again, a bit of a mind shift to get on top of your diet and tweak it, change it, natural approaches. When instead of, you know, just layering more supplements, you started really incorporating that activation, right? What did you notice first? I remember you were saying, you know, energy, brain clarity, the motivation, cleaning the mold. yeah, to me, you know, that they're all big things. Like for me, after 3 days, and this isn't the same for everyone, but I had burnt the candle at both ends, recovering my son. Like his official diagnosis was reversed on our wedding anniversary, May 2016. And I didn't find out about activation until 2.5 years later, December 2018. But what I noticed was within 3 days, I felt like I was back in my 20s. And like I had to sell off my bricks and mortar clinic because years of growing up out at Central Queensland, we'd get crop dusted, you know, on our pushy and cotton farms and, you know, sorghum and wheat farms and all the runoff that we'd be swimming in the creeks, everything that we're absorbing, like you said, you know, 26 seconds into the bloodstream. And then when you have MTHFR gene mutations, you know, the enzymes aren't working properly. And I had two, plus I've got the celiac gene, you know, and other genetic stuff going on as well. It's like, it's amazing we only had one child that was severely impacted by autism, right? So yeah, for me, I just think, you know, if there were three things that you found that was absolutely pivotal for you, what was it? Like you mentioned, energy, brain, motivation, absorption, what would it be?
Oh, goodness. Well, it is those things, really. I mean, they were everything.
Yeah. Because here you are trying to work in clinic, you know, trying to build a business, you were studying and all that kind of stuff. It was almost like it was holding you back because you had all this potential, but it was something holding you back. Would you say that that's fair to say?
Yeah.
Beautiful.
I mean, I've just always been passionate about natural health, and so it's been an ongoing journey of doing different modalities. And as you mentioned at the beginning, you know, I'm always open to receiving information, and oftentimes it completely conflicts with what's already in there. And I just think, well, it all smushes around, and we keep learning as we go along. And
yeah. Well, I just want to say thank you so much for sharing your journey with us, Tina, and definitely your courage for speaking up, because I know, you know, when you're sharing this kind of stuff, sometimes it can be, you know, we feel vulnerable. I know I did initially. And just the thought of sharing my story, you know, like I remember the first time I got up on stage and I was sharing this story in front of 200 doctors and psychiatrists, and I'm thinking I had to run out the back, and because I was sick, but I had to remember it's not about me. It's about, you know, like you said, you got that questionnaire updated. There's a real purpose in you to make sure that people don't go through the same thing you went through. Yeah.
100%. There's something that I mentioned earlier about the different light bulbs keep going off as I'm realizing things. And there's one I haven't shared with you, Rhonda, that I had drop in when I was thinking about doing this call tonight. And now this is bringing the emotion up. I had toxic shock syndrome twice because of tampons.
Yeah, right.
When my babies were little. And that's the most vulnerable. I tell my girls, I've always told them to use natural products for that reason, but I thought I had flu. For a long time, I believed that it had been flu. And then I realized what it was. That's the most vulnerable part of our body for us women. And there I was absorbing all those chemicals.
Absolutely.
So that's been another.
Yeah, that is so important, because so many people, especially women, they have no idea about the toxic load of those products. Yeah, absolutely. So not, you know, personal care products, your skincare, you know, what you're washing your hair in, all these different things, even, you know, the microplastics, you know, like they say, what was it? What we're consuming like a credit card every month. What do you think that's doing if you've got MTHFR gene mutation? So, yeah, I really appreciate that. And I just want to say, you know, we are not here to diagnose, treat, mitigate, reverse anything, but this is all just about education and lived experience. And we're definitely not here to, you know, bag on doctors or health professionals. We're not promising, you know, miracle outcomes or anything, but what we are saying is that genes are not the problem, but the environmental toxic load is. And when you support the body to actually detox as nature intended, right? When you're not when you're under that constant pressure of that chemical load, the stress, the nutrient depletion, poor sleep or whatever, that's where your body just immediately goes into fight, flight, or protection mode, just like, no, freeze, I'm done. And that's what many researchers refer to as the cell danger response. And it's something that I've studied when I was, studying with the Medical Academy of Pediatric Special Needs. The first thing they were saying when it comes to MTHFR, you need to reduce the stress. You need to reduce the cell danger response. Yeah. And because the body is constantly perceiving that we are under attack, we've got some kind of threat, and your body just goes into survival instead of being at optimal levels. So that's where you see the energy drops and your detox slows, and if you're not eliminating every single day, if you're not doing a bowel movement, you go, oh, that was a good poo. If that's not happening and you've got MTHFR, you're in big trouble, because your toxins are just going to continue to increase and inflammation will rise, and the communication systems between every single cell and every single organ, it's just the gut-brain connection, all that. It's like you're trying to have a chat when you've got a teenager wearing those bloody headphone things, right? And like I was saying, it's not all doom and gloom, because I have both. I'm heterozygous to both MTHFR variants. I've got a positive celiac gene. Yeah. My nutrients were all over the place. My homocysteine was creeping up. My histamine was off the chart. Anaphylaxis to bees and green ants, and, couldn't wear any kind of, insect repellents, and I would just boomba. This is all part of it. Yeah. And when our son started to have that major regression, that was a huge wake-up call. Yeah. It's about just understanding what's going on. So, yeah, support mitochondria, right? Identify what's harming, reduce the things like oxidative stress, yeah? Reawaken the protective pathways, NRF2, NRF1, replenish with collagen. Like, we didn't even really touch on collagen, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think when we incorporated the activator, the liquid collagen activator, that's when the brain really started to kick right into gear. Was that correct?
Yeah, I think it was. Yeah.
Yeah. Because I think that was about 3 years ago.
Yeah.
But yeah, your cells come out of that protection mode. So, that communication opens up and everything just cruises on like it's supposed to. So that's why Tina and I never miss a day when it comes to activation. So yeah, we fly around the world together. We're exposed to all these stresses and sleep disruption, whether it's the grandkids or what. But yeah, it's cellular insurance and it's resilience support. So all we're doing is supporting the body as nature intended. So yeah, thank you again for sharing your story so openly. And to everyone listening, if this resonates with you, if something clicked with you, please reach out to the person who pretty much cared enough to invite you or to share the recording with you. If you're thinking of someone who needs to hear this, feel free to send them the recording. No one should be navigating this stuff alone. We have an amazing community. If you're anything like us and you're already thinking of the 11.8 million people who need to hear about this, we are building a community. We are creating a movement of heart-centered people who understand what this chemical load is doing, how we can build resilience, how we can really help with that cellular health. If you're keen to surround yourself with like-minded people, reach out. We would love to hear from you. Yeah. Help other people reach their true potential. That's pretty much what it's all about. So thank you for trusting us with your time, and we will see you at the next info session. Thank you so much, Tina.